because what is it that you need, and why is it that your resume is being looked over? It's because you don't have X experience in whatever industry compared to probably hundreds and thousands, 10,000s of resumes that they're also getting in, and that's why you're being looked over. But if you're able to build up that experience, yes, it might not be that number one company you want from the start. It's okay. And I want people to know it's okay because you have that opportunity to get that hands-on experience, what the larger size companies are looking for. I just want to always remind everyone, like, hey, don't give up. I think when you give up, that's when you fail, right? I don't even like using the word giving up, but just say not yet, right? Just keep on trying, keep plugging it in, and your effort will be so awarded later on.
Welcome to episode 14 of Sharing Developer Stories, hosted by Tech Rally. Today's guest is Suzy Choi, a talent acquisition manager. She shares a lot of insight and advice on how to break into tech. I'm really excited about this episode. Stay tuned. Hey everyone, welcome to the Sharing Developer Stories hosted by Tech Rally. Today we're changing it up again. I got for you Suzy Choi, a talent acquisition manager, and just an amazing resource to help you find a job. Hey Suzy, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me, Alex.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really excited to have you on. And usually I have a lot of software engineers and software developers, but it's always good to kind of change it up and bring in a resource that could really give you a lot more insight about finding a job, changing up your resume, fixing your LinkedIn, all of that stuff. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. And before we start, can you just give us a little intro about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually in the cybersecurity world. I'm a talent acquisition leader. Honestly, I think titles are just whatnot, especially in the startup world, just because if you're working in there, you're probably doing more outside of your job
Mhm.
realm. But I do everything from strategy. I oversee our D&I committee as well, and the operational side of talent too. So that's a little bit about me.
Got it. Got it. And do you work mostly with the senior developers, or is it just developers in general? How's that work?
It's honestly the entire spectrum. Because startups, I usually, my jam is like building it from like 50 to maybe 500, 1,000, and then exiting and
Hmm.
then building my next, company, right, with the next founders,
Hmm.
etc. So yeah, and I would say most of the time it's more mid and senior level roles because we do need people to start running off the ground. There are certain opportunities as we are scaling right now where we are introducing more roles in like the junior, not too green side, but more to the junior mid side as well. But yeah, it just all varies.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, I do admit that I've been in a lot of clubhouse rooms with you, whether it's the recruiting and people kind of sharing job positions or even tips and tricks. And I think that you've kind of talked in a lot of them, I believe, and gave a lot of good resources. And for those of us that are maybe trying to find a job or just can't seem to get plugged in, what do you what kind of recommendations or what kind of minimum requirements do you usually suggest them to have?
Yeah. Hopefully the rooms that you were in, it kind of resonated with you or it was
Mhm.
helpful to the people that were in there because that is my goal. Honestly, for people that are looking for jobs, I think the most important thing is to be specific of what you're looking for, right? Don't generalize. For this one, we're talking about, engineers, right? So are you
Yes.
looking for specific languages that you want to focus on? Is it specific industries? Is it specific, like, organizations? When I say organizations, are you looking to take on and wear multiple hats in a startup company? Or are you looking to really be in a more structured environment like the FANG companies that many of us in our clubhouse rooms talk about, right? So it's really
Hmm.
diving in and figuring out what is it that you want and why do you want that? If you have it so generalized, it doesn't help yourself. It doesn't help the recruiter or the hiring manager that you're speaking with either. So I think that'd be my one biggest tip.
Right. I think that's a really good tip for more experienced developers because you kind of have that luxury of choice.
That's
But I feel like sometimes it's a little difficult for those junior developer candidates that are just trying to land that first job. And I, at least personally for me, I didn't really have much options when I wanted to get my first job. Yeah, I just took whatever gave me one, to be honest, to get that experience and try to eventually, hopefully, find a job that really kind of suits my needs. But would you say that being picky is could potentially be a detriment, like depending on that level, or is it still like you would be more specific with what you want?
Yeah, in a way, it can be, right? So if you were to go into a relative general role, let's just say, for example, software engineer, right?
Hmm.
It's very broad. You can honestly use so many different languages, so many different softwares, etc. So if you go into a company like a startup, you actually have so many opportunities to go into different routes regarding your
Hmm.
professional growth. But if you go into a larger size company, you can sometimes, it may be detrimental because you're pigeonholing yourself into a specific role that you just accept. So on your
Right.
resume, if you are trying to make a different move, not within the company, but externally, other recruiters or hiring managers are going to see whatever tech stack, background expertise that you worked in, and they're going to think, oh, this person is only looking for a job in this area. So in that
Right.
situation, it could pigeonhole you unless
Hmm.
within internally you express vocally like, hey, I want to go into this type of role, this type of division or industry. That might be a little bit more beneficial because you're already inside, right? It's
Right.
just getting the job that is the interview that is hard, not really doing the job. So
Yeah, that makes sense. I had a quick question. Do you know the difference between sourcing and recruiting by any chance?
So they're kind of intertwined. So
Hmm.
mostly for larger size companies, when you have sourcers, you're on LinkedIn or any other job platforms where candidates are out there, right? And you're
Hmm.
sourcing the resumes, potential candidates. Sometimes in those larger size companies, that's their specific role, just to
Hmm.
look for candidates that are matched and aligned to the XYZ positions. From there,
Right.
the interviewers or the recruiters are the ones that take over the interview process, and they're usually your point of contact, right?
Got it. That
So
makes
those are the
sense.
yeah, those are the larger size organizations. In smaller size organizations, you'll have people and recruiters doing that from end to end.
Right, because maybe just they just don't have the resources to really separate those responsibilities, so they have that one person kind of doing
Exactly.
everything,
Hmm.
right? And the reason why I ask is if I was a junior developer or just someone that's trying to contact a bunch of people on LinkedIn, like would it be better to try to look for that sourcer role and to contact, or would it be better to just do like a recruiter umbrella check? Like, do people actually write sourcer on their LinkedIn, or is it just kind of
Yeah, all
recruiter?
roles kind of vary. You have
Mhm,
some professionals that are sourcers in their
mhm,
title. You have recruiters, corporate recruiters. It's all going to vary, but they're all
right,
relatively in the same department, right? In the same
mhm,
realm of talent.
right,
If you want to be that specific and can find whoever is in charge of that role, definitely reach out. If you see it on LinkedIn, sometimes it shows. But
mhm,
honestly, the best way to probably be a bit more ballsy is what I like to say is reach out to the hiring manager. If you can figure out who the position
mhm,
is reporting to, might as well find a creative way to get in front of them. So
right.
yeah, why not just take it a step above? Or if you
That's a
can go even further, do that.
Right, that's a really good point. I mean, the like even back in the 10 years ago, it was just all about just sending in your resume through their platform and hoping they respond back. But in 2021, there's just so many different ways that you could communicate with people that work at certain companies, whether it's like Twitter, LinkedIn, and whatnot. And of the bajillion resources out there, whether it's Indeed, Simply Hired, LinkedIn, sending in your resume directly to the company, like what do you think is, if you had to like put tiers on it, like where would you say a person that's looking for a job
Hmm.
should kind of concentrate their main focus on?
Networking. And
Through what?
hmm?
Through like LinkedIn, or like what do you think is
Doesn't
the
matter. Like if you
Mhm.
find your people through LinkedIn, like you can network on Clubhouse. Clubhouse has opened up so many opportunities and it's a great platform because you get
Mhm.
that 20, 30, 90 seconds to pitch why someone should reach out to you rather than
Right.
someone just blatantly looking at not a physical you but a copy of your resume without getting to really know who you are, and they can't
Mhm.
really sense or feel the tone in your voice or the passion. But if you are the type of person where you're just applying to a job with a resume, good luck. And that's what I always love to say. There's so many people who put in the bare minimum, don't even
Right.
customize their resume to the specific role that you are applying to. And mind you, you should always have multiple resumes, not just one, multiple. And I think that's where a lot of people don't even get to that first stage, is because what they do don't really show and compare to the role that they're applying for. Even if they do it and they are capable, the person on the other end doesn't know you, right?
Hmm.
So you may be able to express that and go further into your expertise if you get that phone call and if you're lucky enough. But if they don't know you, you don't even get to that stage, you're already going to be disqualified, right? So
Yeah.
I think networking is honestly the biggest powerful tool, whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, Reddit, Clubhouse, live networking events, it doesn't matter. Find that person that you're really trying to reach and then go from there and build a relationship.
Yeah.
I think it needs to be very genuine.
Right. Right. And if anything, I would say our relationship is somewhat genuine because of the consistency behind the
Mhm.
clubhouse. It's not like I've ever physically met you or anything, but we've been in the same rooms together and we've had some very like, great discussions about careers and what you need to do to potentially stand out. And clubhouse, I mean, I talk about Clubhouse a lot in
Mm,
my YouTube videos. I've talked to Stephanie through Clubhouse. I made a dedicated video through Clubhouse. And I know that a lot of my developer community friends, they're not huge
mm,
fans of it because they have that Twitter space, which is also good.
mhm,
But I noticed that there is a tendency, maybe it's because of the people I follow, it's a lot of software developers in these Twitter spaces. And as great as it is to talk about tech and all of that stuff, maybe these people that are in the spaces aren't actually working full time, right? And
mhm,
in some ways, I feel like I got really lucky by joining Clubhouse when I did because I was exposed to so many different recruiters, sourcers, knowledgeable hiring managers, and whatnot. And it's such a shame because Clubhouse inherently is temporary. So you just don't get
so,
to really experience or other people can't experience what you're experiencing because it's going to be gone in that instance. But in some ways, being able to be consistent and like building genuine relationships will kind of get you in front of that line with when someone's hiring and whatnot. And like maybe you can kind of speak a little bit about people that did get hired. I know some people announce that a lot in the rooms, but like have you seen a lot of people get hired through Clubhouse?
personally, I have one actually. So if you know Perna, she is pretty active on Clubhouse.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I actually recruited her daughter, and her daughter now works at our company. How did
No way.
that happen? Yeah, like how did that happen? It's because she and I share a lot of stages,
Mhm,
and she sent me a message because I personally told. I think it was that specific room we were looking for, like a content marketing person.
mhm,
And she sent over her resume, and I had a chat with her. I loved her daughter. She has such passion. And those are the type of people like we look for here,
right.
people who are very
Mhm,
ambitious, driven, like hungry. And like, yeah, like we found her a home at our company, which is awesome. From the people just pitching to us, I have not specifically found them a position within our company, but
mhm.
I've been more than happy to connect them to my network. Hopefully, something worked out there. I have no issue doing that. But yeah, that'd be the one personal instance and story that I could definitely share. You don't know who is listening, so why not take that shot? Just throw yourself out there. And
Yeah.
don't be shy. Don't hold back because you really don't know who is listening. You don't know who's going to give you an opportunity.
Right. And it's beyond just going to those clubhouse rooms and just listening as an through the audience. If
Mhm.
you are able to take that next step and do that pitch, and after you finish, you follow up again through LinkedIn messaging, all of these are really strategies that it takes effort at the end of the day. And if you're not gonna do the effort, then don't expect to get the job. So I think you pretty much nailed it there where we have to kind of come up with different ways to get noticed because to your point that the days of sending in your resume and then just hoping for the best is kind of gone. But
Yeah.
speaking of resume, you did mention like multiple different resumes. How many do you have, and like how do you just kind of cater each one depending on the person you've been talking to and whatnot, or the company you're applying for?
What do you mean with the other resumes? Are you specifically talking about when I apply to a position or when I'm helping out a candidate?
Oh, like if you were to kind of assist someone that's like, hey, like, is does this one resume work for everything? And if you
Mhm.
say no, because that seems to be the case, like, what is it that they need to change up a little bit to
Yeah.
cater towards the job description, or is it to the company, like
Mhm.
whatnot? Like, what
It
kind
should
of
keep up
advice
with
would you
what
give?
you
Yeah,
just said, right?
yeah.
So depending on whatever position that you're really interested in, you need to tailor that resume specifically to that job and that
Hmm.
company, right?
Hmm.
So if you're applying for 30 jobs and you're literally interested in all 30 jobs, you want to
Hmm.
tailor all 30 resumes. What I usually
Right.
suggest is have, like about 5 to maybe 7 top companies that you're really, really interested in. This is like, oh my gosh, this is my dream job. Really focus on your time to put in effort into your resume, whether you invest in a resume coach, career coach, etc. It's so worth it. Yes, I know some people, I've honestly had people come to me and complain like, oh my gosh, your service is kind of expensive. Like other companies, they're expensive. But if you think about it, if you're going to pay X amount of money, but this next career move is going to get you, let's say hypothetically, a 10 to 50K increase, or maybe into your dream job, like, isn't that really worth investing X amount of money to get where you want to be rather than you constantly failing? Like, I don't
Hmm.
understand why people don't invest in themselves more. Like, when you get to a more leadership position, like an executive coach, etc., you need certain coaches that are specifically helping you get better in certain skill sets to also get you there. If you're able to learn about it yourself, after gathering information, more power to you. That's awesome, right? But yeah, it should always be catered. I think it's also great to have a general resume around, but definitely you want to spend like the bare minimum. I'm a pretty fast worker, like maybe an hour, but I would say definitely several hours on your resume to customize it. It's not just like,
Yeah.
oh, 10-minute job, I'm done. Like it
Right.
just shows.
Right. I think the developer community, we sometimes give advice coming from our own perspective,
Mhm.
but what I've learned a lot, uh, as an experienced developer, is doing the research, talking to juniors, talking to a lot of aspiring developers that are trying to land that first job. And a lot of experienced developers, they say resume doesn't matter, but it only doesn't matter because they're already experienced.
Mhm.
But if you're not experienced, you're gonna have to do some of that extra work, whether it's having multiple resumes, paying for the or no, I don't want to say paying, investing in someone that's kind of knows how to get you that job. Because
Right.
sometimes developers could give you the worst advice, but the recruiters are technically the ones that
Or
are gonna kind of give you that initial introduction to hopefully get that interview, and then that's when you have to have your engineering skills shine. But yeah, like to your point, multiple resumes, investing in yourself. Like if I had to translate that into like the developer community, it's like invest in yourself by buying a domain for your
yeah,
websites. Don't use like those
exactly. Yeah.
free websites for your portfolios. All of these things are super important. Yeah.
And Alex, I love how you brought that up. Like, if you have a domain for yourself, right? If especially in a developer role, if you have a GitLab, etc., put that on your resume. There's so many people who actually don't include that. So I can't see the work that you are
Mhm.
creating. So how do I actually know you are a great developer without looking
Right.
at the stuff you've completed or made in the past?
Right.
So the most basic thing out of developer, especially if you are a UI developer or engineer, I'm going to want to check out the websites you've built. Is it
Hmm.
something that is going to amaze me and be like, oh my gosh, even though their resume probably isn't up to par where I wanted to be, but if their portfolio is amazing, I will actually let that kind of slide a little bit.
Right. And
But
I want that to sink in a little bit. I'll even give this like a few seconds to sink in because that is super important, right? Like, yes, your resume, your LinkedIn might not be shining, but man, just that instant when someone looks at your profile and it's beautiful and it's a great experience, like think about that.
yeah,
That could be the game changer right there for you.
it really is. Because if you think about it, not everyone is great at, working on their resume or their LinkedIn because it's not really your expertise area as a
Hmm.
developer, right? And we're talking about developers, so that's why I'm using that. Your expertise as a developer is to create, well, like a web developer right now, create
Hmm.
amazing websites,
Right.
right? So that's what I want to see. So I won't totally knock you down on your resume. But that's one thing I will also take into consideration when you're coding. You need to be very detail oriented. But on your resume, you have a lot of grammatical errors. I'm going to wonder, I don't think you're too detail oriented. If you get your coding wrong, it's not going to be a functional website. Did you really
Hmm.
create your website? Did you,
Hmm.
outsource it to somewhere else and then create it for you? Not, those are
Hmm.
things like in side things that recruiters actually take into consideration. So it's not just, basic things like, oh, we just disqualified you for this, but it's a
Right.
whole pattern and circle that we actually review in a whole spectrum.
That's really news to me, and I think whoever is listening is going to be super appreciative of that real like that nugget of advice, because sometimes people, at least in my industry, are just so focused on the technicals that, to your point, like we're not salesmen, like we may not emphasize LinkedIn as much, but depending on where you're at in life, like if you're 6 years in, maybe there could be a little bit more leeway, but like I said again, like the junior developers, and like if you are trying to get that second role or the third role, or like you are trying to get that first role, you kind of have to put in a little bit of the extra work. I
Mhm.
had another quick question. Like, what do you think about being active on LinkedIn and in terms of like your job prospects in general?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Do
Uh-huh.
you mean active as in, if you could kind of clarify, actually, that would be better.
Yeah, and I realized it was kind of not it was really vague. How do you actually be active on LinkedIn? Because when you're on Instagram, you're just scrolling, and then you could like comment. When you're on
Mhm,
like TikTok, same pattern, right? But
mhm,
sometimes I just have this difficulty with LinkedIn commenting or liking things.
mhm.
But
Uh,
would you say that's just kind of part of being quote unquote active on LinkedIn? Because I always hear recruiters say, "Get yourself noticed," like
mhm.
be commenting on people's posts and one, not obviously in a genuine way, but like, do you follow that mantra as well?
I should probably follow that mantra a bit better. Maybe it's just because I don't really care enough.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat. Yeah.
But also at the same time, I'm not really looking for, a bigger follower count. I'm not looking for
Mm,
a new position. So I'm in a different position compared to other people that may be having different agendas, right?
got
So
it.
I think it depends on where you currently are. If you are looking to be more of an influencer on LinkedIn, yes, you want to be consistent with your postings. It all kind of ties into the algorithm aspect, right? If you are looking for a position, what other people mean by being active is you want to keep posting like articles or showing maybe like a storyline, make it visual for people to see. Like, how are
Mhm.
you improving your website? Like, what is your journey like? Human beings are very visual people. So if they can envision it and see it and kind of follow you on your journey, that makes it so much more exciting in that sense, right?
Got
Um,
it.
and if you are also posting articles or maybe anything related to the engineering world or your specific, web development world, etc.,
Right.
those are always great. If you're interacting with other people's posts by liking or commenting, that is also being active too, because sometimes what recruiters do or talent managers do or hiring managers will go into your profile and we will look to see how active you are, as in what are you posting, how much are you interacting with other people on the LinkedIn community. That's what people usually mean by like, how are you active.
Got it. That makes sense. If I had to kind of counter argue that a little bit, because I've heard this from other people, it's where, oh, the people that are only sharing coding stuff on LinkedIn are people that don't have jobs yet in some regards. And I'm
So,
like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, you're still sharing your skill sets and
mhm,
sharing your what you're capable of doing. And ultimately, if you're able to have that final project, why like isn't that kind of the point? But uh, I don't really know where I was gonna go with this, but I've heard people say that, and it's I would have to disagree. And I know people post on Twitter all the time, so why not just kill two birds with one stone by being active on LinkedIn and just copying pasting it over to Twitter, or
mhm,
vice versa. I do have another question about maybe cold calling or cold emailing or cold LinkedIn messaging. Like,
mhm.
do you feel I've heard mixed reviews on Clubhouse. Some people are just say, just give me the job description ID and tell me where like what you want. And maybe those are bigger companies,
Uh-huh.
but like if you had to kind of break it down, like if I was cold emailing a recruiter or sourcer that's at a smaller company versus a bigger company, like what are the do's and don'ts for each one?
Well, let me ask you this. My response will always vary depending on what the person messages me. So, why don't you give me an
Mm.
example? and we'll do like a role play scenario and why I'll tell
Yeah.
you why I responded in whatever way.
Got it. Got it. Whew, this is good. Really tough. Like, is this recruiter like a bigger company or a smaller company? I guess
It
it
won't
doesn't
matter.
matter.
It won't matter.
Oh, that's a tough one. Well, I know I could cheat and be like, "Hey, I saw you on Clubhouse," but I'm not gonna use that one because that's a little too.
It's fine. You can because I get messages like that too.
Oh, really? And there are moments where you would reject and would deny as well.
I will. Yes.
Oh, shoot! Wow, I feel very on the spot. This is like I'm usually the one just asking questions, so
You just switch roles,
I
Alex.
know, right? I don't know what's going on here. Hey Suzy, I met you on Clubhouse. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna like have to revise this message. But hey Suzy, I met you on Clubhouse, and I really loved you sharing information regarding XYZ, and I've really taken it to heart. I've actually updated my resume. I've made variations of my resume, like you said, and just sent it out to a few companies. Thank you for your advice, and hopefully we can connect again, or hopefully we can connect. But I assume that we're not connected yet, so like maybe we could
Okay.
establish that relationship first, and then maybe 2 3 after we do connect, maybe after a week I say, hey, like just giving you an update regarding what I've been able to do through your advice, and hopefully by then I've already had some rooms with you, so
Mhm.
like you know who I am, and then just try to build that rapport that way. And then maybe I'll ask like, I would love to, if you have time, would you be free for like a coffee date, or to kind of discuss about any holes I may have or any weaknesses I may have on my resume. Would love to chat as well, kind of something like that.
Got it.
Obviously I would think a lot more about this in terms of when I'm actually writing it, but yeah,
Right.
something along those lines.
All right. So this situation that you brought up, it's going to vary, right? It
Hmm.
depends on how much of a conversation we've had on Clubhouse. Do I, first
Mm,
of all, remember who you are, right?
right.
And from your first response or your first co-calling message to me, you said, I said XYZ, I did this on my resume, sent it
Hmm.
out to companies. Was I specifically the one that gave you that advice, or was it just something that you heard while you were in the audience? Right? Because all of
I
my,
see.
yeah, my advice is always tailored towards that specific person or
Got
role
it.
or etc. And yes, on Clubhouse, my advice is a lot more general, just because you know the platform of it. We have so many people on there, so unlike this conversation where I can actually go into detail with you, in those platforms, I need to make it very high level
Hmm.
because we don't have much time. I don't want to take up too much space. And second of all, I just have a lot of freaking questions. That's how I
Hmm.
help someone out. And I'm very
Right.
blunt. So yeah, this it's kind of hard to kind of answer your
Yeah.
question in the situation, but just hypothetically, if I did say I gave you that advice, you came on stage, you're like, "Hey, Suzy, I have this question for you," and I
Hmm.
gave you that advice, I would honestly ask you, I mean, I'm more than happy to share advice on LinkedIn, even if you were to reach out. But if you didn't also remind me, let's say you messaged me like 3 weeks after or like a few weeks after, I'm probably not going to remember what I said. If you don't also state, hey, this was the room that we're in, like if you don't like message me within that day or maybe that moment on LinkedIn, I'm not going to
Hmm.
remember you. I don't remember
Right.
what I say on there. I'm in so many different rooms. I talk to so many people. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm probably not going to recall who you are.
What about a scenario? I just remembered I did see your LinkedIn,
Hmm.
and your profile did say we are looking for these positions.
Hmm.
If I message you saying that I did, meet you on Clubhouse, or I saw you posted on LinkedIn, obviously if I just say this is my resume and like I would love to have a conversation, like what is something that's getting you over that hump where it's like I've seen the job description on your profile, but like how do I come off as not so transactional,
Hmm.
but at the same time, kind of what this is in some regards, because you
Right.
did put it on your profile. You say you're looking for someone, but what are they supposed to do to make it at least feel somewhat genuine then in that
Yeah.
regard?
For me, honestly, transactional is fine as long as you're
Okay.
being honest about it and genuine from the front. I don't
Hmm.
want someone being, like scheming or whatever and trying to get something at the end. If you want
Right.
something from the beginning, just be upfront with me. That's totally fine.
Got it.
How they reach out though, and I understand what other people. to a comment you said earlier where they're like, oh, look at the job description, send it to me or whatever, whatever. I would
Right.
honestly say that. Did you take the time, if it's on my profile, did you take the time to actually go to the company website to read the job
Mhm.
description? Because if you had time to
Mhm.
read that, that was on there, you also see that our career webpage and our company is also linked in. So it shows me how
Mhm.
much of an effort are you actually putting in on your end. If you just tell me like,
Right.
hey, I'm interested in the front end engineer, here's my resume, and I look in the database and you haven't even applied, I'm starting to wonder, have you even looked over the job description? Do you even know what you're
Right.
applying for? Like, how do
Right.
you know that you're qualified if you haven't even looked at what the job is entailing? These are things that are going through my head. And
Mhm.
we get that. I personally get thousands. I'm not even exaggerating, thousands of messages all the
Right.
time. And I don't care to accept every single one if you're sending me a request. If you're just like, hi, find me a job, and no, thank you. Like, it just comes off very lazy. And I don't want to hire you to work for my company anyway. I wouldn't recommend you
Right.
for my network as
Right.
well if I'm putting my name on it and sending you over. So, I mean, a lot of people need to do their due diligence. When I say be specific, it's literally, for example, hey Suzy, I heard you on Clubhouse. You gave some advice on so and so and so. I saw that you had a front end engineer position on your website. I have gone ahead and applied. I'm qualified because of XYZ, maybe a quick bullet point. And I was hoping that you could look over my resume. Or if you are not the right person in charge of that role, please could you get me in front of that person, right? And if you wanted to maybe
Wow,
a
that's I'm
quick time, it's different. When I say be specific, is be that specific. You need to get me
mm,
to really move and see why I should help you. It shows me when you say stuff like that too, you've done the work, you're willing to put in the work. So I'm
right.
not doing it on the other end for you. Why should I really get you a job? I don't need to hire you. Yes, it'd be great if I could fill the role, but that's not my job. You didn't hire me as a consultant for you.
Mm.
So why are a lot of
Mm.
people, like, what frustrates me is a lot of people feel so entitled just because, I'm in a talent acquisition like leadership role. For them to just come to me like, find me a job. Like, no, do you not really respect my time? Like, why do you feel so entitled that I should do this for you? It's fine if you do, but at least be a bit more sincere and genuine about it. Just don't be like, hey, here's my resume, find me a job. Like, no, you can find it for yourself.
Right. It feels like a tale of two cities, right? Like in some sense, like one aspect you can be just too vague and unclear
Mhm.
and not really specifying anything that you're just saying like, hey, thank you so much, but you haven't really shown the effort to make it somewhat transactional. And then someone that's just like completely transactional but doesn't have any follow up with it, you're just like, hey, I saw you were looking for a position and here's my resume, and then like like they don't really follow up with why they believe they're qualified and all of those things. So I think if anything, if I had to self critique myself the first time, is probably I hadn't really given you a call to action to
Exactly.
actually
That's
do
very
something.
important.
It was just more
Yes.
like, hey, I took your advice and I'll follow up again and then
Yeah,
we'll
it's
see
just
what
like,
happens.
okay, so what do you want me to do? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
I'll probably put you on read, be like, okay, cool, like, good for you.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Oh my gosh,
I think
this is
everything that anyone needs to do always needs to have a call to action.
mm, that makes sense. That makes sense. Well, Susie, I mean, I could ask you a bunch of questions, but is there something that I'm personally not addressing or asking you that you think is like a job seeker should know about this, or someone should really emphasize these parts that whenever they just start their job search?
Yeah, I think one thing I always want to state is the people that maybe want to get into tech or maybe transition in, they usually go for the larger size companies, right? And there's nothing wrong with it, don't get me wrong. But
Mhm.
there's a higher chance if you actually target startup companies to get your foot into the door. Because what is it that you need? And why is it that your resume is being looked over? It's because you don't have X experience in whatever industry compared to probably hundreds and thousands, 10,000s of resumes that they're also getting in, and that's why you're being looked over. But if you're able to build up that experience, yes, it might not be that number one company you want from the start. It's okay. And I want people to know it's okay because you have that opportunity to get that hands on experience. What the larger size companies are looking for. So even though it may not be today that you're working at, because I know on Clubhouse everyone's talking about Fang, and I have no problem with that. My culture just doesn't align with, I just love building up startups. That's why I'm here.
Hmm.
But if you don't give up that way, one day you will get there. And you never know. People and recruiters from those companies might actually be reaching out to you and be like, hey, we want to recruit you. So
Right.
I just want to always remind everyone, like, hey, don't give up. I think when you give up, that's when you fail, right? I don't even like using the word giving up, but just say not yet, right? Just keep
Yeah.
on trying, keep plugging it in, and your effort will be so awarded later on.
That's really good statement. And I don't know if you know my background or not, but I've also more or less come from like a coding boot camp, and
Mhm,
then I've worked at to what you were kind of saying. I worked at startups for almost 6 years
mhm.
before I got my job at Amazon, and
There you
it's
go.
exactly right. And it never really registered in my head that I like, oh my gosh, I should get Amazon right out of a coding boot camp, or I need to get it after 1 year of coding. I really had to your point, really get good at this and
Mhm,
get the experience, wear many different hats, learn how to adapt when your team is like very, very small and you have to write a lot of code.
mhm,
And I think if I ever tried to apply to Fang during that time, I probably wouldn't get it because I just didn't have enough experience, didn't have enough technical skills. And yeah, just I would have just it, my first time applying to Amazon or having an interview with Amazon, I got it.
mhm.
And I know there are stories where people have failed multiple times and all of that stuff. And kudos to them for trying and trying and trying. And this is not me bragging. I think for me, I've failed enough so many times within the 6 years that those failures could probably be accumulated as well to why I got to where I am. So that's a really good advice. And yeah, I think that's a great way to end it. But before we do, if anyone wants to contact you, or if you want to share any social links, feel free to do so right now.
Yeah, thanks. And before I do that, Alex, brag all that you can about yourself. You put in that effort, right?
Right.
And what you say and when you share your story, you don't know how many people that's going to resonate with and give people hope. So brag about yourself. Let them, like, let other people know, like, hey, I was here, but I got here. Like, look at me. I'm a story, and like, I'm like, just look at my story. Like, here I am
Right.
now. Boast about it. Don't ever be shy about it. That's one thing I always like to say.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
yeah, like, to your question, LinkedIn is probably the best way to reach me for career related. I am slowly working on my business Instagram too, so you can find me on Connect Suzy. Slowly, I'll have tips for people that are job seekers and also people within the talent industry. So I'll be posting a bit more to share more advice that way. So slowly
Awesome.
working on that branding and content.
Branding and content, yeah. And I'd love to have every person I meet on Clubhouse on, because you know what, like I said, there's so much knowledge there and it's so temporary. But slowly but surely, I'm bringing one of you in one by one. I'm gonna make sure to get every one of you in there. But Suzy, this was super fun. I really appreciate your time, and I think my audience will find a lot of value from this
Hope
because,
so.
yeah, so many good nuggets of information. And for everyone else, I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
Of course. Bye.